Greetings and welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Lokita Maka. Thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do press that subscribe button. Please press the notification bell so that you can get notified every time I upload videos. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. Please don't forget to like the video, share with other people as well, and do comment on the comment section down below. So on our previous grade 10 video, we looked at agroecology. Now in this particular session, we're going to be looking at interactions in the ecosystems and also the ecological farming. So we'll actually have a look at how energy flows within ecosystems. How do living organisms react with one another? How do they respond to various abiotic components in their environment? Now, as a learner or as a student of agricultural sciences, this is very useful and it's very good for you to have a good understanding of these dynamic interactions. So in terms of what we'll be discussing, we'll look at the energy flow in ecosystems. Now that involves a few things that you actually know from grade 4 if I'm not mistaken, and then we'll look at nutrient cycling in the ecosystems. And then we'll then look at the interactions now between the organisms in the ecosystem as well as the ecological farming methods. Now let's get to it. Let's start with the energy flow. Now, how does energy flow within the ecosystem? So this, we're going to discuss it in 3 things. We're going to have a look at food chains, we're going to have a look at food webs, and then lastly we're going to have a look at food pyramids. So this is not a new knowledge to you. This is something that you know, child. This is something that you know and something you have a good understanding of. Now what I want is, when your teacher gives you that test, you make sure that you know this from the back of your head. Now let's look at the food chain. This is the beautiful food chain that I could find on the internet. Yes, I don't own any copyright to this image. It's not mine, but I downloaded it somewhere on the internet. Now let's have a look at this. But now, before we actually discuss what a food chain looks like or what happens in a food chain, I want you to be able to define a food chain. So basically, a food chain is a relationship. But now, what kind of a relationship? Right? So it's a relationship of what is what in an ecosystem, or the way different organisms interact. Right. So in this case, now if you look at this picture, right, we have a green plant there, which is a producer. Now this green plant produces food. Now this is something we have mentioned on the previous video. We've got producers, we've got consumers, and then we've got microorganisms, or decomposers rather. All right. Now, so this plant makes its own food. It doesn't bother other members of the community. No, it doesn't bother anyone. So it makes its own food because she's a lady, you know. But now there is Mr. Grasshopper there. Now Mr. Grasshopper is a consumer. Mr. Grasshopper depends on this producer, right? And then now Mr. Grasshopper eats that grass plant, or that green plant. Who is a consumer? Who is a producer, I mean, right? Now in this case, Mr. Grasshopper, because the only thing that he eats is green plants, so he's considered as a primary consumer. He's a herbivore in this case, right? And then we've got another consumer, Now we've got Mr. Frog. Mr. Frog now consumes Mr. Grasshopper. Does it make sense? And then it doesn't end there. Mr. Frog also gets eaten by Mr. Snake. You see? But now, even with the snake, as much as it's a tertiary consumer, but it has actually someone or another organism who actually consumes on them, which is the final consumer. And in this case, in this picture, it's a hawk, right? However, there comes a time where this animal now dies, the final consumer. Now, this final consumer dies, and then what will happen now when it dies? It will decompose. The nutrients now will be sent back to the soil. Now, those nutrients will be decomposed by what? By the microorganisms that are in the soil. Now, this is where decomposition takes place. So now what will happen now is, in this food chain, right, there will be a transfer of energy from the green plant to the grasshopper, to the frog, to the snake, to the hawk, and then finally back to the soil. So you can tell that these are sequence steps. That's why this is more like a cycle, right? So it can still be a food chain if it starts from the green plant to the grasshopper, and then again ends with the frog. Still, there is energy that is being transferred there, right? Then let's have a look at the food webs now. So what is a food web? As you can see, look at that picture carefully. So now in a food web, unlike a food chain, like it's not a linear transfer of energy. So this is a food chain, however, it's always interlinked with another food chain. So it's different food chains that are linked together. So all of these food chains now will then form a food web, right? So if you look at this picture, we have our producer there. In this case, there are two producers, right? They are grasses and shrubs, or trees rather. So now in this case, the grass will be eaten by the grasshopper, right? But that grass is not only eaten by the grasshopper, but it's also eaten by a rhino. Is that a rhino? I think so, right? But now this rhino does not only consume on the grass, but it also consumes on the trees or on the shrubs, right? And then this tree is not only consumed by the rhino, but the giraffe as well consumes on this tree. And then both of these, the rhino and the giraffe, can be consumed by the lion, right? And then again, if you look on the right hand side, there is a mouse there, or a rat, that can be consumed by a fox. But this fox again can be consumed or be bitten by a snake, and the snake can be consumed by a hawk, right? I hope this makes sense. So these are different food chains if you look at them. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, I think it's about 6 food chains that are in this food web, but they are linked together. So now this actually, in terms of what we are talking about or what we are discussing in this particular session, this actually helps to maintain the balance of both plants and animal populations within the community. Now let's look at the next one, the food pyramid. Now this is a very interesting one. Now this is where in your exams or tests you will get to maybe calculate, because now this is where you are actually taught how energy is transferred, how much energy is lost now when it moves from one trophic level to the next one, or from one organism to the next organism. Right. So obviously if a grasshopper consumes the grass as it is, when it's now being eaten by a frog, it's not going to share or transfer the same energy. So there will be energy lost there. So now if we were to look at this pyramid, you can see it looks like those pyramids that we see in Egypt. Some of us only see it in pictures, but some of us have been there and have seen them. So a pyramid is a pyramid, guys. So most trophic levels can actually be presented in this kind of a diagram that looks like a pyramid. Now this actually tells us, or it's actually easy to show how now the producers, which are usually the largest group, followed by the primary consumers, which is a slightly smaller group than the producers, then followed by the secondary consumers, you can see the frogs there, and then followed by the tertiary producers. So now in terms of the food pyramid, what is very important for you as a grade 10 learner to understand is that, one, it can be presented into pyramids of numbers, pyramids of biomass, and also pyramids of energy. So now if we have to look at the pyramids of numbers, right, now what will happen is there will be a decrease in numbers when if we look at the pyramid starting from the bottom on the primary producers, right? Because now if we look at these producers here on this diagram, right, these are green plants, right? So if now we have to understand the pyramid of numbers, right, so this will be a representation of the size of the population, right? So there will be a total number of producers, a total number of primary consumers or herbivores, a total number of secondary consumers, a total number of tertiary carnivores, right? But now the higher it goes up, the lower the number of these population. So in each level, obviously, because they are consuming each other, right? And then now there is pyramid of biomass, Now, biomass basically is a term for the mass of living plants and animals, right? So it will be measured in grams of dry matter per square meter. So this is another good way of showing the different trophic levels in the ecosystem, right? So now again, the higher it goes up, there will be a decrease in the biomass. So now obviously if you look at this one again, there will be a total mass of producers, there will be a total mass of herbivores, a total mass of predators, and also the total mass of what you call tertiary or rather top producers. And then we have the last one, the pyramid of energy. Now in all food pyramids, there is more energy available at the base or at the beginning of the chain, right, than it would be at the end or at the top there. As you can see, that I have been mentioning this, the more it goes up, the more energy is lost, or the less number of animals are there or organisms are there, right? So there is usually a 10% decrease at each level. Now, this energy that is not passed into the next step or into the next base, it's actually lost through what? Respiration and excretion. Right, you can see here, there is loss of energy through heat. So in this case, we've got the energy that that is actually stored as biomass. Now if you look at this properly, it started from 20,000 up until 2 at the top there. So the smaller the level is, more energy gets lost. Now we're gonna move to the next topic, but I want you to actually have a time to yourself, think about what we have discussed so far, just in few seconds. Think about it, see how much you can recall. If you feel like you need to repeat, or you need to go back to something that you didn't understand, feel free to do so. Pause the video, move backwards, and then try to listen to that particular session. So this session will be a little bit longer. But take your time, because this is work that you actually did over a week, but we're gonna try to do it in an hour or a little bit more than that. But stay tuned, relax, have your water with you, have your pen, and also share comments on the comment section below. So now let's have a look at the nutrient cycling in the ecosystems, right? We're gonna discuss 3 cycles that you need to know by head, cycle whose terms you need to know by head. We're gonna look at the water cycle, we're gonna have a look at the carbon cycle, then we'll have a look at the nitrogen cycle. So water cycle, this is one of the cycles that you also did when you were somewhere in grade 4, 5, 6, right? So it's also known as the hydrological cycle, right? So this is basically a cycle of how water moves from the ground to the sky, back to the ground, right? we have different terms that I actually want you to have an understanding of, to know them by head. For example, in this case, you need to know what the examiner means by precipitation, what the examiner means by condensation, transpiration, evaporation, surface runoff. Those are the terms that you need to know by head. So we've got clouds, we've got rainfall, we've got ocean currents, both cold and warm ocean currents. We've got wind. All of these play a vital role in the water cycle, but they are driven by the sun's energy, right? So now what happens is the water will move through the atmosphere, right, through the uppermost layers of the land masses to the oceans and back again, right? So what happens in this, now let's have a look at this diagram, right? Now it's unfortunate that there is no sun in this particular cycle, but you will imagine that there was sun, right? Because that's where it starts. So the sun will actually evaporate water from all the freshwater bodies, as well as the ocean. Now then, this water, what will happen is it will form a vapor. It will move in the form of vapor to the atmosphere, and there it remains as a vapor, right? It can also remain as clouds or it can also remain as ice crystal. Then what will happen now? This water will then fall back now as rain. It can fall back as hail, it can fall back as snow, it can fall back as dew or mist. Now this is what we call precipitation. So it precipitates out, right? It comes back, it falls back, it precipitates, right? So by now you know what precipitation is. Now, also there's another term that we call transpiration. Now this transpiration from plants also produces water vapor, right? Now, this also goes to the atmosphere. Now we said that now once this water reaches the atmosphere, it comes back again, right? It will remain there for a while. That's why if it's very hot on a day, do expect a rain, because what happens is that sun will heat the plants, it will heat the water that is on the land, it will heat the oceans, and these will evaporate. It's the same thing if you put water on the kettle, it boils, then there is that vapor that comes out. So this sun hits the oceans or all the other water bodies on the ground, and then they evaporate. They take out vapor, they boil, even though we won't see them doing that. Then what will happen now? Once it reaches the land, water is then soaked either on the ground, and then it slowly filters through the streams, through the rivers, through the aquifers, through the lakes, and at the end finds its way to the ocean. So as you can see now in this water cycle, right, we've got inorganic substances that are involved, such as oxygen, we've got hydrogen. So they are being used by the ecosystem over and over again. Now this takes us back to the interactions that we are talking about, the interactions in the water, in the ecosystem. Now the supplies of these substances, they are fairly, like, most of the time they remain constant in the system, and they are being reused, they are being recycled within this particular system regularly. Now this is the same for carbon, this is the same for nitrogen. So the activities of producers, consumers, and decomposers all contribute to the constant movement or recycling of these nutrients. So that's why we are saying this is a nutrient cycle. Does it make sense? Now let's come to the next one. Very interesting one, very easy one. Carbon cycle is very easy, guys, very easy. Don't need to know a lot, but you need to know it, right? Now carbon is central to life on earth, very important. We cannot do anything without carbon. Without carbon we cannot have oxygen that we need to breathe in. So it's one of the important components of the organic compounds. It's very important to organic compounds like your fats, your proteins, your carbohydrates. So now what happens here? Carbon in the form of carbon dioxide, right, is obtained from the atmosphere and used for photosynthesis by green plants and algae. Now that's why I was saying without carbon, then we as humans cannot get oxygen. So we need that carbon. We need that carbon dioxide in the air. We need that carbon dioxide, but obviously in moderate, right? We need the natural one, the one that we take out as animals and as humans. Does it make sense? So now even here there are quite important terms that I want you to understand. In the carbon cycle, respiration is very important, both animal respiration as well as roots respiration, right? Combustion is one of the important terms that obviously your teacher has mentioned, and fossilization is one of the important ones, and many more. If you look at this picture, there's also transportation as well as factory emissions that are being mentioned that contribute to the carbon dioxide. Now what happens? That's why I was saying this is a very easy one. This is a very easy cycle, and that's why I just wanted it to follow the water cycle. Started with the water cycle because you know it, but with the carbon cycle, it's basically just carbon being circulated. It's carbon being circulated, right? Now through activities, as I mentioned, such as respiration, decomposition, fossilization, combustion, most of the carbon dioxide is then returned to the atmosphere. Now, this is how the fossils are produced. Most of the time, this process actually takes millions of years. So what happens now in this cycle? We take the carbon dioxide out, and then through the process of photosynthesis, this carbon dioxide is taken by the plants, and then we eat those plants, and then we take it out. But we're not the only ones who take it out through respirations. There are other activities. Other plants will decompose, the animals will die and will decompose, and they will contribute to this carbon that is being taken to the atmosphere. Sometimes the urine as well as the feces of the animals will also contribute to this. The burning of fossil fuels, the factories, the cars, they contribute to this carbon cycle. Now let's have a look at the nitrogen cycle. One last one. So this one can be tricky. It can frustrate you. It will make you, I don't know, you will wish you were never in that class, but eventually you will master it. That's one thing I know. So the nitrogen cycle is basically a biogeochemical process which transforms the inert nitrogen present in the atmosphere to more usable form of living for living organism. So this is basically a process of transformation. It takes place in both biological as well as non-biological processes. So we need nitrogen, right? But we cannot actually consume nitrogen as it is. I hope that makes sense. Like, you can just stand out at your house and then you just take in nitrogen. No, it doesn't work like that. Yes, it does have an important aspect. It serves as a key nutrient element for plants, but the abundance of this element is available in the atmosphere, even more than oxygen. However, we cannot use it directly as it is. So it needs to be broken down. It needs to be processed from one step to another. So these are the steps that you actually need to know by head. So nitrogen will actually be converted into many forms, various forms that you need to know. You need to know these by head, because they're gonna ask you, child. And the teachers will want to trick you, and they will want to ask you this one because they know it has various steps, but it's very easy to know these steps. So don't be discouraged the minute you see all these names. So you need to know all these processes. So the first one, I want you to write this down. It's fixation. We've got nitrification, we've got denitrification, and we've got decay. So now again, fixation, nitrification, denitrification. Oh, and also we have mineralization. That's another one. So now what will happen? We've got these various stages that I actually want you to look at. So we've got the nitrogen fixing process. Now this is the initial step. This is where everything starts. Now what happens here is that nitrogen in the atmosphere, which is primarily available in an inert form, is converted into a usable form of ammonia. This is NH3, right? So now during this process of nitrogen fixation, so we are fixing it now, right? So the inert form of nitrogen gas is deposited into the soils from the atmosphere and the surface of water, and this is done mainly through the precipitation. Now, so this whole process of nitrogen fixation is basically completed by symbiotic bacteria. Now, these are also known as diazotrophs. Then we also have rhizobium, which also play a major role in this particular process. So bacteria is very important in this process, right? So now this bacteria actually consists of a nitrogenase enzyme, which has the ability or the capability to combine gaseous nitrogen with hydrogen to form ammonia. So the nitrogen fixation can occur either by atmospheric fixation, which involves lightning, or industrial fixation by manufacturing ammonia under high temperatures or high pressure conditions. This can also be for example, be fixed through man-made processes. Now, these are primarily industries that create ammonia and nitrogen-based or nitrogen-rich fertilizers. So this is gonna take a little bit long, but I want you to understand. So with what I have just said now, what is important is, so nitrogen can be fixed in different ways. Atmospheric fixation, which is the natural one, where the energy of lightning breaks. So you must know every time when there is lightning, chances are nitrogen is being fixed, right? And then we've got industrial nitrogen fixation. Then we've got biological nitrogen fixation. So with the biological fixation or biological nitrogen fixation, this is mostly bacteria that play a role there. And then with an industrial nitrogen fixation, these are man-made alternative that actually aid in the in producing ammonia, for example, right? Now then we've got nitrification. Now this is the process where ammonia is converted into nitrates now by the presence of bacteria in the soil. Then these nitrates are formed by oxidation of ammonia, that NH3, with the help of nitrosomonas bacteria species. Now later the produced nitrates are then converted into the nitrites are converted into nitrates, right, by the nitrobacter. Now this conversion, guys, is very important. Let's have a look at the other stage now, the assimilation. So primary producers, which are plants, they actually take in nitrogen compounds from the soil with the help of their roots, right? Now these are basically available in the form of ammonia. They are available in the form of nitrite ions. They are available in the form of nitrate ions or even ammonium ions, and they are used in the formation of plant and animal proteins. Now this way actually it enters now the food webs when the primary consumers actually eat the plants, right? Then we've got ammonification. Now, so when plants die or when animals die, the nitrogen which is present in the organic matter is then released back to the soil. Now, then the decomposers, which are your bacteria, your fungi, which are present in the soil, would then convert now the organic matter back to ammonium. Right? Now, this is the process of decomposition, which then produces the ammonia, which is further used now for other biological processes. Then we've got denitrification. Now, this is the process in which now the nitrogen compounds make their way back into the atmosphere by converting nitrate into gaseous nitrogen. Now, this process now in the nitrogen cycle is basically the final stage. Remember, we said we start from nitrogen fixing, the fixation. We fix it first, then we nitrify it next, then we assimilate it, then we ammonify it, and then we denitrify. Now, when you denitrify it, you take it back to the atmosphere. So they find their way back to the atmosphere. So now, in the case of denitrifying, it is carried out by denitrifying bacteria. Right. Now, why is it important? Why is nitrogen cycle very important? Now, basically, it helps plants to synthesize chlorophyll from nitrogen. It helps to convert inert nitrogen gas into a usable form that we can take in. And also in the process of ammonification, the bacteria help in decomposing animal and plant matter, which indirectly helps to clean up their environments. And again, the nitrates and nitrites are released into the soil, which helps to enrich now the soil with the necessary nutrients. Right. So in terms of the nitrogen cycle, let's hold it there. Right, so now I want us to look at the second last part and the last part of our lesson for today. I want us to look at the interactions between organisms in the ecosystems. That is the relationship within the ecosystem. Remember, now we said ecology is the study of the interaction between abiotic factors as well as biotic factors. So now this study or this relationship, which is ecology, this study actually gets to a point where it influences the changes in the ecosystem. It influences the changes, whether in size of a population, and now these are called population dynamics. So we find different relationships in the community or in the population. Now, in this particular section, we're going to look at 5 relationships. That is competition, predator and prey relationships, mutualism, as well as commensalism and parasitism. So when we look at the competition, now this is when 2 or more individuals in an ecosystem want or need the same limited resource. This could be food, it could be a nesting site, it could be mating. So they are competing for the same resource. Right now, competition is usually the greatest when there are many individuals, just like even with human beings, guys, this happens, Then we've got the predator and prey relationship. Now, this is where one organism quickly kills another organism. So there is a predator and also there is a prey. Now, some examples of this would include, let's say, a leopard killing an impala, right? Then we've got mutualism. Now, with mutualism, most mutual friend. This is where both organisms benefit in a win-win situation, right? Then we've got commensalism. Now, with commensalism, this is where one organism benefits and then the other does not benefit. However, it's also not harm. So it does not benefit, nor it does get harm. Then we've got parasitism. Now, with parasitism, this is where only one organism in this relationship benefits, the parasite. They're the only one who are benefiting, and then the other, shame, poor animal, the other one gets what? Gets harmed. Then I also want us to look at ecological farming methods. And there are about 5 that we're going to have a look at. I'm going to start with organic farming, right? Now, I'm going to pause it here because I actually want you to take time, divide your book into 2, write what the organic farming does and what it does not do. For example, when we talk of organic farming, it uses organic inputs, it uses crop rotation, it uses compost, all these organic methods, conservation of water, biodiversity, you name them. So I want you to write this down because this is actually a summary, right? And if you know these, all of them, then it means you know these ecological farming methods. And what does organic farming not do? It does not use synthetic chemicals. It does not use GMOs. It does not use chemical preservatives, antibiotics, hormones, monocropping, overuse of water, overgrazing, and you name them. Then we come to biological farming. So even here, you're going to do the same. And if possible, paste this somewhere on your board where you study, just next to you. Write them down nicely. Write do's and don'ts of these farming methods. So with biological farming, it's similar to organic farming. There's soil health management there, crop rotation, composting, natural fertilizers. It does not use chemical inputs, GMOs, overuse of tillage, monoculture, overgrazing, mismanagement of livestock. Then we've got conservation agriculture as well, which uses minimal soil disturbance, cover cropping, crop residue management, crop rotation, terracing, you name them. But it does not use or practice excessive tillage, monoculture, overuse of chemical inputs, you name them. Then there is game farming as well. So even there, I've listed do's and don'ts, which I want you to know them by head. Then we've got sustainable farming or alternative farming. Sustainable farming, it actually practices crop diversity, water conservation, soil health management, you name them. It does not use excessive chemical inputs, monoculture, water waste, GMOs, you name them. And also, here's what I want you to do is to actually take some time, pause this video from organic farming, copy them down, or you take a picture, you print it out, it's fine. But also what I can do is to share this particular session of the slides with you, then you can just print it. Or I can share the whole presentation, I save it into a PDF, then you're good to go. And now It's question time. It's question time. So even on this one, I just want you to take your time, answer the questions, be truthful as you can be, and then you can refer to your notes and just answer the notes. But it's very easy. So what I want you to do in this particular one, you're just gonna draw and label a simple food chain. Then the second thing that you're gonna do is to describe. Now, if a question say describe, you are describing, right? It means that you give the name of the interaction first. So here it says describe the 5 types of interactions that are found in the ecosystem, and it's 15 marks. So what does this mean? Chances are 15 divide by 5, so that is 3, right? And you are supposed to give, then it means there is 1 mark for giving the type and 2 marks for the description, right? So it's very important for you to actually look at the marks that are being awarded, right? And then number 3, list the main features of biological farming. So now again, this takes you back to those do's and don'ts. What are the features? What can you tell that, okay, this is a biological farming method, this is a conservation farming method, this is game farming, sustainable farming, organic farming. Anyway, my lovely people, thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you for spending your time with me. Love and light. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, and please don't forget to leave your comments below. Let's interact with each other. Let's talk. Let's engage. Let's help each other grow. Let's help each other pass. Otherwise, from my side, love and light. Much love. See you on the next video. Thank you. Bye.